What's going on, guys? Today we're making Osaka style okonomiyaki. This is a thick, savoury, cabbagey pancake lathered in a sweet and tangy sauce and Kewpie mayo. Let's get to it. Order in.
お好み焼きにするからこのホットプレート持って行ってくれ。オッケー。豚肉、餅、チーズ、エビとあるがどれ入れる？
全部入れるに決まってるじゃん。
少しは遠慮ってものだな。出来上がりだ。
Orders up, service please. So we're starting off today's recipe by first making a quick okonomiyaki sauce. This stuff is super simple to make, and all you need to do is combine 2 tablespoons or 30 ml of ketchup, 1 2/3 tablespoons or 25 ml of Worcestershire sauce, 1 tablespoon or 15 ml of oyster sauce, and 1 teaspoon or 5 grams of white sugar, or to taste. Mix all that together until well combined and the sugar is all dissolved, and then set it to one side for later use. Next up, we need to make the batter for our okonomiyaki. Into a large mixing bowl, we're adding in half a cup or 70 grams of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon each of white sugar and baking powder, crack in a couple of large eggs, and half a cup or 125 ml of dashi stock. Now, if you don't have any dashi on hand, feel free to sub this out with another type of stock or even just some water and a bit of salt. Whisk everything together until it's just combined. It's cool if there are still some lumps in there at the moment, they're going to get taken care of later and you don't want to overwork this batter. Then once everything has just come together, this batter needs to rest, so we're going to cover it with plastic wrap and let it chill out in the fridge for half an hour. While the batter is resting, we can focus on getting the rest of our ingredients prepped. Firstly, the main component of our dish is the cabbage. Start by removing the core from a quarter head of cabbage before slicing the whole thing up into even sized strips. Then you're going to take those strips and cut them down into roughly equal sized pieces. The cabbage is going to wilt when this is getting cooked, so you don't have to be super precise for this, but just try and make sure that everything's roughly the same size. You're going to need about 1 cup's worth of shredded cabbage per person, so since I'm making 2 today, we're using 2 cups. Next up is our spring onions. Simply remove the ends before finely slicing everything into little rounds, reserving about a quarter cup's worth of the thinly sliced greens for garnish, before setting the rest of the onions to one side in a bowl. Up next is our ginger. Today I'm using a pink pickled ginger that you'd normally see being served with sushi because it was all I could find in the Asian supermarket. Now, if you're able to find the red pickled ginger, which is a bit brighter and thicker, consider using that as they add a bit more texture and colour to the dish. Either way, we're going to dice up about 2 tablespoons worth of this ginger, or to taste, and then set it off to one side. Now, for a less traditional inclusion, I'm going to grate 1 carrot to fold through the batter. The beauty of okonomiyaki is that the word essentially translates into what you like, okonomi, and cooked, yaki. Meaning you can add in whatever you want into your okonomiyaki, so just have fun and experiment with your favourite ingredients. With all of our veggies prepped, there's just a couple more ingredients to sort out. Firstly is our mochi or rice cake. To prepare this, I've got about a quarter cup worth of frozen rice cake that I'm just going to cover with some boiling water and let it sit off to one side to slightly soften. Then we need to talk about tenkasu, also known as tempura scraps. As the name implies, these are the little bits of tempura that float up to the top of the oil while you're making regular tempura. Now, most Japanese grocers should stock this in some capacity, but if you can't find any, you can either skip it, or if you want to be extra like me, you can go ahead and make a little bit of tempura batter by mixing together half a cup of flour, 1.5 teaspoons of corn flour, and 3/4 of a cup of ice water. Then we're going to mix that together with... oh! Eat your heart out binging with Babish fans. But seriously, just mix this together until it's nice and smooth and then head over to the stove. In a small saucepan, I've had 2 cups or 500 ml of vegetable oil sat over medium-high heat for about 5 minutes. Using a fork, drop little bits of tempura batter into the oil. If the oil is up to temp, the batter should bubble and float up to the surface almost immediately. Let these scraps cook for a couple of minutes until they're nice and crispy, and then we're going to remove them from the oil and drain them on some paper towel and leave to one side until they're needed. Now, because that isn't enough filling already, and also because Natsumi has no restraint, also known as living her best life, so we're also going to be putting some prawns into our batter. I've got some cooked prawns left over from yesterday that needed using up, so I'm just going to be cutting up 4 prawns into bite-sized pieces. This may not look like a lot, and you're right, but I'll get to that in a bit. Now, by the time that you've done all of that, the batter should be ready to come out of the fridge, and now we can begin mixing everything together. Into the batter, we're first adding in all of our spring onions and grated carrot, the finely diced ginger, half of our diced cabbage, and about a quarter cup of our tempura scraps. We'll start mixing everything together before remembering that you also need to drain and add in that quarter cup of rice cake from earlier, stir that through until well combined, and then add in your remaining cabbage and thoroughly mix together again. Now, because Kate doesn't like shellfish, I'm separating half of the batter into another bowl before mixing in my cut up prawns. Obviously, this step is optional depending on your home situation and who you're cooking for, but if you're wondering why I was only using 4 prawns for this recipe, this is your answer. With our batter now sorted, we can head over to the stove and place a large frying pan over a medium-low heat and add in about a tablespoon's worth of vegetable oil. Once the oil is heated, we're adding in 1/4 of our okonomiyaki batter. Spread that out into a circle that's roughly 15 to 20 centimeters in diameter and sprinkle over a 1/4 cup of grated cheese. Add another 1/4 of the batter to fully cover the cheese and then gently press the edges with your spatula to form this into a circle. Next, we're draping over a few slices of thinly sliced pork belly to cover the surface of the okonomiyaki. This stuff is usually available in Asian grocers, but you can substitute this with bacon as well if you can't find it. Cover this big boy with a lid and let it steam and fry for about 6 to 7 minutes or until the bottom has gained a lovely golden colour. Once that has been achieved, we can move on to the daunting task of trying to flip this thing. Either use 2 regular sized spatulas or if you have one handy, a real long boy like this. Get underneath the okonomiyaki and then in one swift and confident motion, flip the entire thing over in the pan. Alternatively, if you're not confident with the whole flipping ordeal, you could totally slide this out onto a plate and then invert the whole thing into the frying pan as well. Either way, once this has been flipped, we're going to give it a few good presses to get it nice and even in height and reshape the sides using the spatula to get this nice and circular again if it's necessary. Then, using a sharp knife, we're pricking a few holes into the surface of the okonomiyaki. This will allow more steam to pass through the batter and help ensure that the inside is completely cooked. Cover this with the lid again and cook for an additional 5 to 6 minutes or until the pork belly is nice and crispy. When you're happy with how your okonomiyaki looks, we're turning off the heat and then flipping this onto our serving plate with the meat side facing up. Now, this guy's looking a little bit naked at the moment, so it's time to get dressed up. Start by spreading a generous layer of your sauce onto the okonomiyaki, and I do mean generous. Really lather this stuff on. I think it's physically impossible to have too much sauce for okonomiyaki. Next up is our Kewpie mayo, which we're going to zigzag over the entire surface of our now well-sauced okonomiyaki. Again, be very generous with this. If you want to get real fancy, feel free to use a skewer or a chopstick to make alternating strokes perpendicular to the mayo stripes to make a fun and decorative pattern. Then immediately make that pattern redundant by placing a generous pile of bonito flakes onto the top, and then just stand there mesmerized for a moment as they do a little dance thanks to the heat coming off of the okonomiyaki. Once you've snapped out of your trance, we're sprinkling over some thinly cut seaweed strips. If you want to be more traditional, you can use aonori, which is like a fine seaweed dust, but I personally prefer the added texture of the seaweed strips. Lastly, we're going to sprinkle over some finely sliced spring onion greens, and here you have Osaka style okonomiyaki from Non Biyori Repeat. Okonomiyaki is best served while it's still piping hot, so let's just dive into this, shall we? And if you've never had okonomiyaki before, I gotta say, you're missing out. You've got a great contrast of texture between the crisp outside and the soft interior. The addition of the cheese makes the center extra gooey and adds a nice bit of saltiness to the dish as well. There's a nice balance of earthy, savoury flavour from the cabbage, sweetness of the carrot, and the brightness of spring onions, and also a subtle sweet heat coming through in the background thanks to the addition of the pickled ginger. The rice cake that I used today was okay. Parts of it got crispy where it was in direct contact with the pan, while other bits that were trapped inside went more chewy and melty, but I think next time using a thicker type of rice cake would be a better choice for this recipe. The pork belly is fatty, meaty and savoury, and is balanced out nicely by sweet and tangy notes from our quick okonomiyaki sauce and also the Kewpie mayo. Finish it up with the umami boosting flavours of seaweed and bonito flakes, and you've got yourself an awesome midweek meal that you should definitely try making at home. As always guys, thanks so much for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed it, let me know by dropping a like down below, and let me know in the comments what food from anime and other media you want to see me make in the future. Subscribe to the channel for a new episode every single week, and until then, pull up a chair, unfurl that napkin, and I'll see you in the anime kitchen. Cheers.